welcome everybody. I know we're running a couple minutes late, so I thought we'd get started. Welcome to Why Do They Say That? Understanding clients from the perspective of someone who has been both a designer and a client. My name's Christina Inge. I am the founder of the ThoughtLight Project, which is a project to deliver training to developers on things like SEO and web analytics and all the ancillary things around the web that we tend not to learn. We're actually having a conference in October teaching web analytics and SEO. I have also been both on the web freelance side and a project manager and marketing director on the in-house side. So I have been both the person designing the website and the person commissioning the website design. So what we're going to talk about is why clients are the way they are. I spent many years as the head of SEO, SEM at an agency, as well as doing my own freelance work. And a lot of things that clients say and do were mystifying to me before I became a client. And then after becoming a client, I had that aha moment that taught me that clients are not crazy. They're not trying to drive us crazy. And often their most mystifying behavior has logical explanations that actually create great opportunities for us as agencies and freelancers. So a lot of us have a very traditional set of questions around the things that clients say and do. Hands up everybody who has always had completely clear feedback from every client. Tremendously clear briefs, incredibly clear directions on what they want. Hands up everybody who has always received consistent direction from a client with no pivots, no changes in direction. No. There's a gentleman nodding there. You must have a charmed life. Or are you from Earth? No. So nobody. Hands up everybody who has never received a timeline change from a client. Not something that happened beyond your own control, but somebody deciding that they wanted something tomorrow when they had communicated they wanted it in a month or something like that. Yeah. And hands up everybody who always gets feedback in a timely manner, also clear, and right on time to hit all of your milestones. Never happens that they're late. Now, so nobody has ever had that perfect client happen to them, but having now spent more years of my life as a client, I can tell you that we are not trying to be evil. So why? Why do these things happen? Why do you not get feedback on time and then get blamed when you don't hit the milestones? Why do you get extremely unclear direction? Like, we want our website to be really, really corporate, but then not have that corporate feel. We want it to be really, really feminine, but please don't use any pastel colors. We want it to have a lot of buttons, but a really simple UX. Why do you get that? It's nothing to do with you. You have done nothing generally wrong. You're not handling your clients wrong. It is almost internal, always internal to the clients. And it has to do with a lot of things that probably have nothing to do with the person you're interfacing with at all, but just the nature of how corporate works and how corporate marketing departments work. So if you understand and put your corporate marketing hat on, even if you've never been a corporate or nonprofit or higher ed marketer, if you put that hat on for a while, and we're going to learn how to put that hat on for a while, you'll be able to better understand and anticipate those little client bumps in the road and prevent some of them from happening. You'll never be able to prevent all of them from happening, and I will be the first to admit that sometimes clients are just messed up and it's not your imagination, but often it's not messed up, it's the way they think and work. So why? Part of it is a different perspective. I'm fairly unusual in that I went into the marketing VP, marketing director role from having been a freelance web developer as well as a writer. Most people who go into marketing have a business school background, not a creative background, not a dev background, and so their language is coming from a completely different education system that they've been through. They've either been through business school or they're a liberal arts major. They often just don't even understand the terminology, and so a lot of the confusing communications from them comes from the fact that maybe, they read something, they picked up some terms, they may be using it wrong, and then you think you're being told to do one thing and they think they're communicating something, and it's not what they think they're saying. So there's different language, but there's also different frames of reference. When you're a designer, a developer, your frame of reference often has to be, how do I make my work as perfect, by what I consider the highest standards of web design and web development. They don't know what those standards are. Their standards and their frame of reference tends to be, how do I please our CEO? Or how do I develop a website that makes more sales? Or how do I just get this project done on time so that of all of the corporate department heads, I'm the one whose project got done the fastest? So their frame of reference can have to do with the politics within their organization, but it also has to do with business goals, which are often dramatically different from design goals. Certainly different from creative goals. It tends to be less about perfection and best practices and more about efficiency and operability. And sometimes you'll be told to do something that honestly looks ugly, but they think it's more efficient and more operable. There's also project importance imbalances on either side, and by that I mean if you're a small shop, their project is a big deal to you, but maybe the website redesign is less of a big deal to them. So when timelines fall apart, it usually has to do with the fact that this project is either colossally important to them, they think their business is going to fail if they don't get a new website, and sometimes they're really right. And on the other hand, they're one of 5 clients for you and possibly your lowest paying client, but they're the neediest. Or and it happens fairly often. So that means they're going to push on the timelines way more than it's worth it to you to push on the timelines. Or if you're a small shop and they are your biggest client, you may be sitting around waiting for feedback and wondering what's gone wrong, whereas the website redesign is so low on their priority list, especially if it's not just a refresh or just landing pages, that it's going to feel slow, but that's because it's a lower priority for them than it is for you. So that's another source of the gap. There's also just different thinking styles. Creative people and developers think a bit differently than business people. We think more, and this is not to stereotype people, but we're trained to think more deeply, to look into problems versus rush to the solution. So you may think something needs to be tested 3 times, and they're like, why does anything need to be tested at all? And Christine made some really good points in her keynote that, to be honest, you really have to work with somebody who already somewhat gets it. So the first problem we often get is clarity. We're told to do things that make 0 sense. And this happens to a lot of people. I mean, as we said, like let's make it look really corporate, but we don't want it to have that corporate feel. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one is that you're talking sometimes, you're a visual thinker, and your client is purely a verbal thinker. So they will often say, how many people have had a client say to them, I don't understand what you're saying, can you describe it better, or can you draw it for me? You tell them something in what is to you perfectly clear language, but they don't get it. They may have a completely different thinking style. You may just draw things and they need to have it explained to them, or vice versa. You often get, especially with business people, folks who are much more a verbal thinker than you might be. So you may think purely in visual terms and just explain things with like 2 bullet points and you're done. I mean, you don't want to have a 2-hour conversation about why the button needs to be orange and on the right. But they may need that 2-hour conversation to feel good about the decision. And you may think you're getting bogged down in this incredibly long and painful meeting. And I'm not saying it isn't, but there's a reason behind that, and the reason is different cognitive styles. Some people, and they tend to gravitate towards business job titles, need to talk things through a lot. They can't just process the world through their eyes, have it go straight to their brain, and just get on with their days. They need to have a conversation around it. They need to kind of have like a whole Oprah show about it sometimes. And if that's the way they think, you kind of have to figure out a way to work with that without them taking up a lot of unbillable hours. A lot of times, though, the lack of clarity is something we can educate people out of because they may think completely differently simply because they just don't know what they're asking for. Hands up everybody who's had a client who completely gets what responsive design is. They don't. And then they'll be like, I don't care. Why doesn't it look good on the phone? I don't want this fancy responsive stuff. I just want it to look good on people's phones. And you're like, but that is responsive design. I don't want to pay extra for that. You kind of, I mean, again, some people are going to just be impossible and they just want to nickel and dime you, but a lot of times they think responsive design, to give an example, is this super fancy, expensive, extra thing that they don't need that you're trying to sell them. So you have to educate them, what does this mean? And again, a lot of times we'll come into meetings with clients thinking that they understand the terminology that we're using, or at least expecting them to understand some of the basic things, and they won't necessarily. Never assume anything. You want to avoid being condescending when you talk to people, but at the same time, don't assume that they know any development or design terms at all. You'll save yourself a lot of pain. So if you say we're going to work on the responsiveness of the site now, they might start yelling, why are you wasting time with this responsive stuff now? Well, because it needs to test out and work on different phones. I thought that was instant nowadays. You need to set expectations from the beginning of what exactly things mean and what exactly goes into a website redesign, especially if you're dealing with someone who, again, has never managed a website redesign and doesn't come from a development or creative background. They really won't know what you're talking about, and that is on you to educate them because they didn't go to school for this and they had no training in it. So you really want to say, well, we're going to make sure your website looks perfect on mobile phones, and they may ask, why? And because they're business people, they're very often data-driven and fact-driven. Make sure you have in your back pocket some statistics of X number of people now access sites using their phones. Try to get access to their web analytics, in fact, and have the information to say to them, listen, 40% of your users are coming to your site using mobile phones, so we're going to make sure they have a good experience, and then whip out your phone and show them the experience they're having now. That will usually be enough to put an end to that conversation of why are we wasting time testing responsiveness. Directions, again, you can often get very contradictory directions. I was once told responsiveness is the #1 thing. We have to make sure every page is responsive. And then a week later I was told, never mind responsiveness and never mind testing it in browsers, just push it live. Well, first of all, you never really want to say yes to that, because then when it looks terrible in Internet Explorer 2, which is apparently used by a majority of their visitors, then you're having your rear end handed to you. But sometimes, again, people lack project management skills. And it's no knock on them. They went to school. A lot of business schools, again, this is to defend the situations that you often find yourself in. Business schools teach people strategic leadership. They presume everybody who graduates from B school is going to end up a CEO. They don't teach you how to run a project, put together a PowerPoint presentation. They teach you how to run multinational corporations. 90% of people who graduate from B school will never run IBM on any level. But that, in many schools, is what they got taught. They didn't get taught how to use Asana. They did not get taught how to maintain the different moving parts of a project. They don't know anything about Basecamp because that's not what's taught in school to them. So they're going to have project management challenges if they are new to running a website redesign. Your opportunity then is to lead by managing the project. Don't do it so it creates more hours for yourself that you can't bill for. If you can bill for it, then create as many hours for yourself as you can possibly get away with. But offer to manage the moving parts and invite them into project management, not put the onus on them. One of the best teams I worked with after becoming senior director of marketing for eZeus was my developer, Steve. He built the whole thing in Basecamp. He built the whole project, and then he invited me into it to fill out what I needed in specific details. And if I hadn't had the background, he probably wouldn't have even given me admin access to Basecamp. He put the project in there and handed it to me because honestly, at the end of the day, if you're managing a team of 20 people, you don't even have the time to manage yet another project. Your perception in your own mind is that the reason I hired an agency or a freelancer to do this is so that I don't have to worry about the details. I just want finished milestones delivered to me. And so if you put the project management onus on your client, you may be dealing with somebody who is managing a 20-hour day already, or at least a 12-hour day already. They've got multiple things they're doing. You're not the only person they're working with. And it's going to fall apart simply due to sheer overload on their part, as well as a lack of skill, because tactical skills tend not to be taught to MBAs. Again, they also may not understand the web design process. A lot of people, hands up everybody who sort of feels like at some point you kind of get treated like you're a magic fairy. You just wave a wand, and the website appears. You're creative. This just flows from your fingers along with all of the rainbows and the unicorns, and it doesn't take you a lot of time, right? I literally once had a client, and I won't name names, say, I don't know, you're so much faster than our previous person. She took 2 hours to design a postcard, and everyone knows those only take 5 minutes. Because I took an hour and 45 minutes, so I was like, mind you, the postcard looked like it took an hour and 45 minutes too, but here's the point. They think it's magic. So if they don't realize you have to iterate, another thing I realize about different thinking styles is some people believe that the creative or the development process just springs fully formed from our heads like Athena from the skull of Zeus. You know, that it doesn't involve iteration, that it's not messy. And it is messy. But if your client cannot understand messy and they don't enjoy being part of the messy process, don't show it to them. If I'm running a butcher shop, I'm not going to make sausage in the window because no one's going to come in and buy the bratwurst after that. Don't make sausage in the window because that's only going to take away from your authority as the web design authority. If they see how many iterations you have to go through, if they see how much you throw out because it looked horrible, they're going to, some clients are going to lose faith in you because they think you are a magic fairy and that everything springs fully formed from your brain. So again, that goes into the overly high expectations, but again, be aware of that and try to avoid as much sausage making in front of your client as possible. Give them the fully baked out Asana or Basecamp. Give them access to it at the level that you think that they're going to be comfortable with. Know what their workload is. Because if someone's super overloaded, I don't care how brilliant they are, I don't care if they were a dev up until a year ago, they're going to be like, please, I can't deal with this right now because I've got, 15 other projects that I'm managing right now. And often the dirty little secret of why you're getting contradictory information from your clients is that somebody above them or beside them overrode them. You're probably dealing with the marketing department, but the CEO can veto them if the CEO is a very hands-on person, because I won't use the term micromanager. They may veto everything from how many columns there are, if they still want columns, which already is a nightmare, to whether it's blue or what the messaging is on the homepage. And if you really get somebody handing you copy saying, this is the final copy, please build the entire front page around this copy so it accommodates it, and 2 days later you get new copy, I can bet you $50 it was either the CEO or the salesperson who overwrote it, possibly engineering. But that gets to the other point, is that you're going to want to know, and we're going to go into the other slides in a minute, who the actual stakeholders are versus the face that you're talking to. So when you don't get feedback, please don't think they hate you, and please don't think they've been eaten by alligators. Most likely, again, talking about the overloaded workforce, or just the fact that somebody's got a lot of stuff they're doing that is also interesting to them. A fire could have broken out in something else they're doing. So I rebuilt a website at one point while my mother was in the hospital. And I sat there, still actually coding it myself alongside my developer. But at the same time, I also let it slide for a week when we had a trade show to do. Because that involved going somewhere, setting up, traveling. So you don't know what that person is going through in their other projects. They may be somewhere else dealing with something urgent. Their sales team called them and said, listen, we're at a trade show. We're completely out of brochures. Get here now. And that's why they're not giving you feedback. Also, sometimes budgets change and stakeholders go away. If the CEO has to sign off on everything because he's the founder and he's going on vacation for a month, well, first of all, if he's gone on vacation for a month, you have bigger problems. But don't ever, I would worry about any place where anyone goes on vacation for a month. But he may just not be available to sign off. And to be honest, people don't like to admit that we're working in an environment where somebody micromanages the colors and the fonts. Because that really should be your job. That almost should not even be the marketing person's job once they've given you the brand book. So they will probably not be transparent about the extent to which people up or on the side are not available to give feedback. And again, sometimes an internal debate breaks out, and that's where your opportunity comes in. So if people within the organization don't have a direction for the website, and you sense that they're sort of arguing amongst themselves, well, should it say this? Should it do that? If you get any sort of rumblings that that's what's going on, that's your opportunity as a designer to jump in and show leadership. This is what other people in your industry are doing. This is what works. This is what's been shown to have a higher conversion rate. This is a really good, clean design that's going to be sustainable for you because it's just coming into style now. That's a real concern for marketing people, is I don't want to redesign this in 2 years because I don't have the budget. I want a design that's sustainable. And so if they're debating within themselves, you can bring in your expertise, and suddenly, instead of just being a willing pair of hands that's coding all day, you're actually a strategic partner. So when you feel there's a lack of feedback, don't panic that they've just forgotten about the project and they're not going to pay their bills, although that does happen. It may simply be that there's an opportunity for you to step up, lead, and lead them out of the morass that they're in and towards the nirvana of a beautiful website. So it's usually nothing to do with you. You want to understand that their different thinking styles could be in play, and you want to learn how to understand them. But more importantly, understand that when there is an issue on the client side, either they can't make up their minds or there's no feedback coming in from the higher-ups, that's when you put your strategic hat on and you offer to go in there or you get on Skype with them and you lead the way. Because after that, you really stop being a tactical person and you become a web strategist to them. And they're going to see you as much more valuable. They're going to refer you to bigger friends and acquaintances. You're not just going to be someone who can fix up a web page. You're someone who can strategize on web design to make their company look better, get them more customers. And they're going to talk you up as that kind of person. So let's problem solve a little bit when we address the whys. So know your stakeholders. Remember how I said that if someone's on vacation for a month, that's why you may not be getting feedback from your person? Sometimes it's as simple as asking probing questions. Say, I really want to know everybody who has a say in this website. If you're dealing with somebody who's slightly an insecure marketing VP or marketing director, they'll say, it's all up to me. It's never all up to them. Trust me, having been a head of marketing for a very long time, we are fairly lowly people. It's never up to, no, I'm kidding. But we are not the only person with say. Copy and content really, if it's a high-tech product, the product and the engineering teams can and should have a say in what is said about the product on the website because they're going to make sure it's most accurate. CEOs differ in how much they want to be hands-on with the website, but they tend to want to know what their website's going to look like. Sales often has opinions on the tactical side of things that have to be taken into account. So you want to do some detective work. There are immediate stakeholders, the people who actually come to the first kickoff meeting with you. They are by no means the full set of stakeholders. You want to ask the probing questions, who is going to look at this website? Don't ask who the stakeholders are because you're going to get a sort of pat answer. Ask how many people are actually going to look at these designs. That's when you're going to get the real answer. And also do some detective work. If you do get all of your client's team into the room, observe who talks the most. They're either the most powerful person in the room or the least powerful person in the room who's trying to grab power by taking up all the oxygen. Observe who, the minute they open their mouth, everybody else stops talking and listens. Those are the people whose opinions are most valued, and I don't care if they are not your direct client. If they don't like something, it's not going to go forward. Listen and observe. It's rarely made transparent to you. You have to do your own detective work and realize who the real stakeholders are. And again, mind the gaps. And when they actually come to you with a difference of opinion, when you notice that maybe some people want it to look very kind of contemporary and funky, and other people are favoring a more corporate style, make sure you actually trick out those problems and try to understand all of the competing needs before you jump in. Remember how I said just lead strategically? The first step in doing that is trying to understand what all the different stakeholders are actually trying to say. So when sales says, for instance, I want this to look a little less creative, what they're actually saying is, I am afraid I will not make my numbers, I will not get my commission, and I will be fired if our website looks so weird that prospects who come to it don't fill out the form to ask for more information. Then I don't get enough leads, and then I don't make enough commission, and I don't make my numbers. That's what they're actually saying when they say this looks too creative. Try to understand what their different problems are and offer compromises between the different sets of stakeholders. It's really the only way to move forward with projects that bog down. So again, marketing has a set of needs that you have to absolutely 100% understand if you're building a website for marketing departments. One is they have to get customers, and it's actually more important than aesthetics. So remember how sales is really, really scared that if the website looks too fantastically beautiful and creative, it's going to turn off the more conservative buyer? Sales has the same fear too. I mean, marketing has the same fear too, because they have to generate the leads for sales. The way it works is marketing is having you put up the website to generate the leads on which they are being judged. They then feed those leads to sales. So if the website doesn't look like it's going to generate leads, they don't care how beautiful it looks. We've all been pressured to create something less creative, less beautiful, less wonderfully written. This is why. They want it to appeal to their customers. And that may not be the highest aesthetics. It might be something much more conservative. You have to respect that because these people's jobs are on the line. They have to generate leads. It also means that they have to gain consensus within the organization. And we all know that anything designed by a committee looks like crap. However, there's always going to be a committee. Again, people's jobs are on the line. They need to have their coworkers like them and like their project. Now, if it starts to really go to hell in a handbasket, again, this is when you as the designer have to say, all right, enough. There are not going to be kittens, okay? They're just not going to be kittens. Unless it's a cat shelter. Okay, in which case you have to be flexible and allow the cat videos. But there is an extent to which you have to be part of that consensus and accept that sometimes beauty will be sacrificed to utility. It is the hardest thing in the world to accept. You want websites that look great on your portfolio, right? The client does not care about your portfolio. That's why you do nonprofit work, for the sake of the people who are just grateful for the free or cheap website. The client who is paying you big bucks cares not a whit about your portfolio. They want leads. And sometimes leads come in better from a website that isn't too fancy. I'm sorry, but now that I'm on the other side, I realize that some of the websites that I have been a party to building have not been as beautiful as I wanted them to be because the imagery did not test well with our target audience, because sometimes the target audience, let's face it, is completely tasteless. Your customer doesn't care. They need to sell to those people with bad taste. I'm sorry, they just do. Other times you really need to integrate things that frankly are just going to look butt ugly, and you have to just bite the bullet and do it. Let's say landing pages. Landing pages are garish. Landing pages, those wonderful pages that you get driven to from an email blast, and I am so glad that I didn't have to do that for D4D because we are lovely, tasteful people. But most email blasts drive people to landing pages, and those landing pages are meant to grab people's attention, and they're loud and aggressive, and they're like car dealership ads. And if you have to build a template for this, just get it over with. If you have to go to the bar afterwards, fine. You have to integrate it with the CRM system. You have to make sure it feeds nicely into Salesforce. It's a pain. Really, really love and respect whoever is the Salesforce or whatever CRM system your client is using. Love and respect the person who maintains that because it is brutal. And if the forms do funky things and they have fields that you don't approve of and the text is too long, they know what they're doing sometimes they don't. But if they really want X text here on a form, they're trying to generate leads with those forms and with that text. Live with it. Same thing for email marketing sign-up forms and all of the other things. That's their main priority, not the beauty. So I already talked a little bit about addressing different thinking styles, so I'm not going to beat the point to death. But understand how other people need to process information at the beginning. You'll save yourself a lot of pain. If somebody's high touch, you have to live with the fact that they're high touch. You have to. You have to book that time in. You have to build it into the estimate. If you send somebody needs to have a really deep Dr. Phil heart-to-heart over 2 microscopically different shades of orange, build that into your estimate. Just understand it. And again, this is not to make fun of people, really, but you have to understand that some people need that. I'm not a big fan of huge amounts of talking, but a lot of people are. Some people need to talk to you face-to-face. Some people need, even if you do it on Skype, they need to talk to you face-to-face. Understand their communication style, and 50% of your communication problems will be gone. If you try to write to somebody who needs to be looked in the eye, you're going to have to send them 6 emails when a 15-minute Skype conversation would have solved the problem. Don't try to force your way of talking or not talking on them. I would rather send you a 3-sentence email and get on with my day. But if doing that makes them angry, and they're like, who's this terse woman? She's sending me these bitchy emails. Then either realize that you have to put a lot of please and thank you and it was lovely to see you and isn't the weather nice into the emails, or you just get on Skype with them and they can see that you are smiling, you're not mad, you just send 2-sentence emails from your phone because you have 18 clients. Or you just aren't, you're not a nice talk emailer, right? But just understand that, and then so many projects fall apart because people think someone else was being rude, and nobody was being rude. Everyone was being nice in their own way, but if you're not talking face-to-face, people don't know that. Get on the phone and get on Skype so at least they hear your tone of voice when you ever sense there's tension. And be proactive. I think a lot of us, we really love our work so much, whether we are doing the marketing or whether we're doing the design and the development, that we just want to focus on the work and we hate to get in people's hair. You have to get in people's hair. Not constantly, but you wouldn't believe how refreshing it is to work with a designer or developer who pings you regularly and isn't like, okay, I got this, trust me, I'll get back to you when I'm done with something, but updates you on milestones, because usually you have someone, whether it's your boss or whether it's the whole team, asking you for status on the project way more often than you're getting status from your agency or your developer. If you give your client frequent, meaty status updates, that's something that they can then pass on to whoever their stakeholders are. They look like a hero, and you're a hero to them. So again, even if you're a big fan of the 3-sentence email, make sure that you're proactive and get in their faces. You don't have to be too aggressive about it, though. If you have an email newsletter or a blog where you talk about design principles, you could educate all of your clients at once by writing a really good blog post and just sharing it. Hey, you know what? We were talking about responsive design and why it's important. Here's the latest from my blog. And then you've saved yourself writing that 6-paragraph email to 18 different people. It also just makes you more of authority. We're almost out of time, so I'm going to open it up to question and answer. Again, my name is Christina Inge. You can see the Thought Light table right over there. If you have any more questions, come see me at the table. You can also tweet me, email me, LinkedIn at me if you have more questions, but I can take 2 or 3 right now. Yes, the gentleman who...
One of the hardest conversations we take out with clients are the ones where, what I want to say is, you hired me to be the expert to give you an answer for this. Just tell me what the question is and trust me to figure out what the answer should be. You hired me because I know this area.
Yeah.
Let me do my job.
Yes.
But what's the best way to have that conversation with the person who, they're CEO of marketing, so they assume that they know everything about the web, even though they are still trying to put a carousel on something?
Yeah. There's times when you actually have to say, let me do my job. The thing is that this is somebody who's either acting out of extreme insecurity or extreme arrogance. And you have to sense what it is. If it's extreme arrogance, educating them often helps. Because then they can look really smart. So if you say, okay, well, you know what? Nobody's doing carousels. Here's the latest research. And the more brand name that research is, it's magic. If Forrester writes about something, it's God's word. Moses brings down Forrester reports. If you have any God's word stuff you can use on someone like that, it's amazing. If they're acting out of insecurity, it's the same thing, but you often want to feed them information so that they can then pretend it was their idea and pass it forward on in the organization. You don't want to go Forrester report because they know they can't rip off the ideas in a Forrester report. You might want to just send them educating emails about why, say, a carousel is not a good idea. It's not going to stop. I mean, the unfortunate answer is that if someone is micromanaging you, that's a personality trait that's on them, and I spent many years, I'm going to be very brutally honest, beating myself up why I couldn't stop people from doing stuff like that. And the day I realized it's all on them and they're like that with everybody, my blood pressure went down 10 points. So the honest answer is you won't be able to stop them breathing down your neck and telling you to do things that aren't a good idea. You're going to have to educate them each and every time, and that's going to be the client that's going to take time. But again, Forrester is magic. Yes?
So how do you phrase the question to find out if they're avoiding you because they're angry or avoiding you because they're busy? Or maybe disappointed or there's just been a miscommunication? How do you, without being like, are you angry with me?
Yeah. No, I'll only use that in relationships where it's a great thing to ask at times. Ask for feedback 2 or 3 times, and is there any way, if there is any way you can arrange a face-to-face with them, you can elicit the things people just don't want to put in an email if they truly are irate with you. Also, sometimes cyber-stalking the company works. If they are a newsworthy company, sometimes I've gotten 0 feedback and I have found out that their stock price plummeted 30% and they just laid off 25% of their workers, and then I was like, oh, I guess I won't be hearing from them for a while, if at all, and I should send in some invoices. Now, if you can stalk, that helps. If you can cyber stalk. Otherwise, you might just need to get on the phone and work your way. The trick is, if calling someone direct doesn't help, if there's a receptionist, try getting in through them. And then just be honest, say, I'd like some feedback. 90% of the time it is just that they're busy. They really are. It's very seldom if they're angry. If a client is angry, they usually would tell you. I've been angry sometimes as a client, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I've been like, listen, it's been 3 months. Where are the wireframes? And so I would say it. I don't know if your clients are maybe a little bit shyer, but I would just keep at it. And to be honest, if they're really busy, they may resurface or they may just go bust. That's the hard thing. One more question. Yes, ma'am.
So you were talking about, interpreting people's learning styles as soon as, you're onboarding them as a client, and then building the time you think it's going to take to effectively communicate with them to do the project estimate.
Yeah.
So if you do that, how do you explain the estimate with them without saying, I need to make this a more expensive project because of your shortcomings? And then how do you reconcile that?
Exactly.
How do you reconcile that with your sales team who's trying to make the sale and saying, they want to sell a cheap project?
Yeah.
How?
Your sales team is unfortunately always going to undercut your project managers. They really are, because they have to give the optimistic bid, and your project managers then have to go back and whack them and say, hey, this is the realistic bid. You really have to say, I don't advocate lying, but if you can't say to somebody, I'm doing this because you never shut up. You have to say something to the effect of, your project could have unexpected things that we uncover as we work on it. Or I get the sense that this project is very involved for you guys and we want to make sure we give it the time that it needs. Say it as nicely as possible. You're really telling people something about their shortcomings. So if there's a way to say we're budgeting it because X, Y, and Z, and it's just because we think this is going to be an involved project because... And it's fine to pick a secondary thing that they all know that they have going on. Like, well, it involves e-commerce, and I know those things take a long time. Or we have to do a lot of testing because you're really going out with new messaging. Find something else you can kind of latch onto that's the secondary reason why it's going to take a long time, and that softens it a little bit. Again, don't lie, but find a nice way to put it is the best. We are actually a little bit over time now. So again, thank you guys so much. I'm going to be right over there for more questions.